First of all, the universal recognition of the importance of the sanctuary of God standing in the world. In other words, this temple was a microcosm of heaven. It was a doorway, a gate, or a bridge between mortality and the divine condition. It was here that the priest could enter in and commune with God, and the deity could descend between the wings of the cherubim and bestow his wisdom and his laws upon his people. And we are told in the book of Kings that this great temple was built without the voice of workmen or the sound of hammers. We are also rather clearly reminded that this house took 33 years to build, and that in the building of it a wonderful symbolism was involved, a symbolism which many Bible students have not taken as seriously as they should. Later, Jesus told his disciples that if the temple was destroyed, he could restore it in 3 days. And his disciples and the multitude decided that he was referring to his own body as a living temple of God. The house of Solomon the king was designed like the mystery of the human body. It represented a shrine or sanctuary fashioned in the likeness of man, and all its instruments and vessels were parts of man's own structure, as was also the original, the temple in the wilderness, from which the design was basically derived. Also we know that the tabernacle, its ark, and its sacred vessels were brought from Egypt, and that designs and representations are to be found upon the monuments of the Egyptians, which are almost identical with those described in the Temple of Solomon. The Kabbalists, being mystics, could not be completely held to the literal story of the building of a house. First of all, they maintained that the temple upon Mount Moriah stood on the earth directly beneath the eternal temple of God in heaven. That the earthly house was a kind of a long shadow of the heavenly house. That it was not only a symbol of God's habitation, but also a kind of covenant between God and man. Even more than this, it was the story of man, the story of the building of worlds, the building of structures, the unfoldment of society, and the final redemption of the human soul. Thus, in the Temple of Solomon, we have the symbolism of the great progress of the world. In the early years of the 17th century, Lord Bacon described the great structure of science as the house of the 6 days' work. He declared also that Solomon's house, as he called it, represented the total structure of man's mental and emotional maturity. That it signified all learning slowly building in the world. That it represented the slow but inevitable growth of human understanding. That we are all here as workmen upon the eternal house, which is sometime to be the symbol of a perfect human society. Thus the Temple of Solomon, with all its workmen, with its wonderful plans and designs, its arts and its ornamentations, can represent the universe itself, built by the orders and hierarchs of heaven. And it can also represent this mysterious, invisible universe, the universe of human consciousness, the universe which man himself is fashioning through the growing and unfolding powers of his own faculties. And it is in this direction that the mind of Kabbalism penetrated most deeply. And to understand their thinking, we must go back with them a little way and study the minds and the thoughts of these old scholars and rabbins who sought to interpret what they regarded to be the divine destiny for man. According to the old instruction, and certainly the temple itself and the manner of its building sustains the belief, there actually exists upon earth only one humanity. Broadly, to this one humanity can be given the name, the chosen people. Chosen not by self-election, but by the election of heaven. That the tribes of Israel represent mysteriously all peoples. For these 12 tribes, with their affinity for the signs of the zodiac, do definitely represent the entire order of life that is born under the 12 signs, divided into tribes, each with certain attributes and qualities and characteristics. And from these tribes were chosen the artificers, the workers. And from each tribe some were selected, both in the rites of the tabernacle and in the rites of the temple, because the perfection of this work was the result of the union of all peoples, all faiths, all skills, all arts, and all sciences.